Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really pressing global challenge, the biodiversity crisis. And specifically, the sheer number of animal species facing extinction or, getting dangerously close.
It's a huge topic, absolutely.
Yeah, and based on the materials we've looked at, it's clear there's a lot to unpack. Causes, effects, what's being done. We've reviewed info that sorts these risks, digs into why it's happening, and even shows some successes, which is good to see.
Right, it's not all doom and gloom, though the situation is serious.
So our mission today is to really pull out the key insights on endangered species. We want to help everyone understand the complexities without feeling overwhelmed, and maybe find some surprising angles too.
Exactly. Go beyond the headlines and get into the substance of it.
Okay, let's jump right in. We hear extinction and endangered a lot. Can we just quickly clarify what those actually mean in this context?
Sure. So extinction at its core means a species is completely gone, globally, forever.
No coming back.
No coming back. Endangered species, on the other hand, are those facing a really, really high risk of becoming extinct in the wild in the near future if things don't change. They're critical.
Okay. And how do scientists figure out just how close a species is? I mean, it's not like they're counting every single animal, right?
No, not exactly. That's where the IUCN Red List comes in, the International Union for Conservation of Nature.
Ah, the Red List. Heard of that.
Yeah, it's this huge, comprehensive inventory. It assesses the conservation status of species worldwide. Think of it like a scale of risk.
Okay.
On one end, you've got least concerned species doing okay, then it moves up through near-threatened, vulnerable, then endangered, and the highest level before extinction in the wild is critically endangered.
Critically endangered. That sounds like the final alarm bell.
It really is. It means the species is facing an extremely high risk of extinction, like right now, without major help. It's a massive global effort to compile and update that list, involving thousands of scientists.
Wow. Okay, so that gives us a framework for the severity. Now the big question, why? What's driving this? What are the main forces pushing species towards endangerment?
Well, the sources consistently point to 5 sort of main interconnected drivers.
Yeah.
And top of the list usually is habitat loss and fragmentation.
Right. That feels like the most obvious one. You clear forests for farms, build a city, the animals lose their homes.
Precisely. Things like urbanization, agriculture, especially huge-scale stuff like clearing rainforests for palm oil or cattle roads, dams, they all destroy natural habitat.
And break them up too, right?
Exactly. That fragmentation is key. It doesn't just remove shelter and food, it cuts areas into small, isolated patches.
So the animals can't move between them.
Yeah, they can't migrate easily, find mates outside their little group, which reduces genetic diversity. Some studies even show, like for migratory birds, even small gaps in forest cover can totally mess up their navigation and breeding. It's not just the amount of habitat lost, but how connected the remaining bits are.
So it's like creating islands of habitat. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the next big driver?
Pollution. And this is way more than just, big oil spills we see on the news.
Right. It's the less visible stuff, too.
Absolutely. We're talking industrial waste, chemicals from farming like pesticides, nitrates, phosphates that run off into rivers and cause those algal blooms,
Yeah.
creating dead zones.
Yeah.
And plastic pollution, which is just everywhere now. These things can poison wildlife directly, mess with their hormones, weaken their immune systems. It all contributes to populations declining.
It's like a slow poisoning in some cases. Okay. Driver number 3.
Overexploitation. Basically, humans taking too much, too fast.
Like overfishing or hunting, taking more than can be replaced naturally.
Exactly that. Overhunting for food, sport, traditional medicine. Overfishing, often driven by massive commercial operations. And then there's the illegal wildlife trade.
That sounds particularly bad.
Oh, it's devastating. Trading animals for fur, ivory, scales, exotic pets. It's often highly organized, very profitable, and pushes species towards extinction incredibly quickly because there's zero concern for sustainability.
Just awful. Okay, what's next on the list?
Invasive species. These are plants or animals introduced to an area where they don't naturally belong.
Like brought in by accident. Or sometimes on purpose.
Both, yeah. They get into a new ecosystem and can just wreak havoc because the native species haven't evolved alongside them. They might outcompete natives for food or space, prey on them directly.
Like that snake in Guam you hear about.
The brown tree snake, exactly. A classic, tragic example. Wiped out most of the native forest birds because they had no defense against it. Invasive species disrupt the whole balance. They can introduce new diseases too.
It really shows how interconnected everything is. Okay, and the final major driver.
Climate change. which, as we know, is affecting everything.
Yeah, it seems to touch all aspects of the environment.
It really does. Changing temperatures, shifting rainfall patterns. These disrupt fundamental biological processes. Think breeding seasons getting out of sync with when food is available.
Oh,
Migration patterns getting thrown off, habitats literally changing like sea levels rising and flooding coastal nesting grounds, or areas becoming too hot or too dry for the species that live there. Sometimes it happens faster than species can adapt or move.
it's like the basic rules of their environment are changing underneath them. Okay, so those are the big five. Habitat loss, pollution, overexploitation, invasive species, and climate change. Let's make this more concrete. Can we look at some specific examples, maybe one from land, sea, and air?
Definitely. For land, let's take the Sumatran orangutan, Pongo abeli.
Beautiful animals, very intelligent.
Incredibly so, and critically endangered. Estimates are down to maybe 14,000 left in the wild.
Wow, 14,000.
And the overwhelming threat, habitat destruction, just relentless clearing of their rainforest home, mostly for palm oil plantations and logging. They absolutely depend on those forests.
It's just heartbreaking knowing how complex their lives are. Is anything being done to help them?
Yes, thankfully. There are conservation groups working hard on the ground, protecting remaining forest patches, running anti-poaching patrols, setting up rehabilitation centers for rescued orangutans. But the economic pressures driving the deforestation are immense. It's a huge battle.
I can only imagine. Okay, moving to the sea. You mentioned the vaquita earlier.
Ah, the vaquita. Vacoina sinus.
That's the one.
This is about as bad as it gets.
Why? What's happening?
It's the world's smallest porpoise, found only in a small part of the Gulf of California, and it is the most endangered marine mammal on Earth. We're talking fewer than 10 individuals left.
10. Fewer than 10.
Yes. It's almost unbelievable. The main reason is bycatch. They get caught accidentally in illegal fishing nets, specifically gill nets set for another endangered fish, the totoaba.
So they're collateral damage in another illegal activity.
Exactly, they just drown in the nets. Efforts are focused on banning and removing these gill nets and enforcing fishing laws. But the illegal totoaba fishing continues because the fish's swim bladder is highly valued in some markets. It's an absolute desperate situation.
That's deeply disturbing. Okay, let's turn to the air. The Philippine eagle. Sounds majestic.
It really is. Pithecophila jeffrey, one of the largest, most powerful eagles in the world. Also critically endangered, maybe only 400 individuals left in the wild.
400? Also incredibly low. What's threatening them?
Similar story. In some ways, deforestation is a huge problem, destroying the old-growth forests they need for nesting and hunting, but also direct hunting of the eagles themselves.
Why would people hunt them?
Sometimes as trophies, sometimes because of mistaken beliefs. They prey on livestock, which isn't really accurate. Conservation involves trying to protect their remaining forest habitat, captive breeding programs to try and boost numbers, and a lot of community education.
Getting local people involved seems crucial.
Absolutely vital. Raising awareness, fostering pride in this incredible national bird.
Okay, these examples really drive home the severity of the crisis. But you mentioned earlier there are reasons for hope, conservation successes. We need to hear about those too.
Yes, absolutely. It's crucial to remember that conservation can work. The bald eagle in North America is a fantastic example. Haliaetus leucocephalus.
Right, they were in serious trouble. DDT pesticide, wasn't it?
Exactly. DDT caused their eggshells to become incredibly thin, so they break during incubation. Their numbers plummeted. But the U.S. banned DDT in 1972.
And that was enough.
That was a critical first step, but it also involved protecting their nesting sites, captive breeding, reintroduction programs, and just a big shift in public attitude towards protecting them. It took decades of effort.
And they bounced back.
They really did. A remarkable recovery. They were removed from the endangered species list back in 2007. It shows what sustained effort can achieve.
That's fantastic. A real win. What else?
Another great one is the gray wolf, Canis lupus, particularly their reintroduction to Yellowstone National Park.
Ah, yes, I remember the controversy around that, but also the ecological impact.
Right. Wolves had been gone from Yellowstone for decades. Reintroducing them in the mid-90s has had these amazing ripple effects through the whole ecosystem.
How so?
Well, as a top predator, they helped control elk populations. With fewer elk grazing so heavily, vegetation like willow and aspen started recovering along rivers. That helped beavers, songbirds, even change the rivers themselves.
Wow, so bringing back one species helped restore the balance.
Precisely. It's called a trophic cascade. It really highlighted the importance of predators in an ecosystem. And wolf populations have increased significantly since then.
Incredible. Any other examples?
One more quick one. The Channel Island fox, Urosan littoralis. tiny foxes living on islands off California.
I think I've seen pictures. They're quite cute.
They are, and they were nearly wiped out. Predation by golden eagles, which weren't native predators there, and diseases introduced by dogs were the main culprits.
So what did they
A
do?
really intensive, multi-pronged effort. Captive breeding, vaccinating the foxes against canine distemper, relocating the golden eagles, removing feral pigs that attracted the eagles. Really hands-on management.
Sounds complicated.
It was, but it worked. The numbers recovered dramatically. It shows that sometimes you need these very specific, intensive actions tailored to the threats.
So these successes prove it's not hopeless. With the right science, resources, and commitment, we can turn things around.
Exactly. It takes dedication, but it is possible.
That's definitely encouraging. Which brings us to the practical side. What can people listening actually do? It often feels like these problems are so massive. What difference can one person make?
That's a really common feeling, but individual actions, when added up, really do matter. Collective action starts with individuals.
Okay, so what are some concrete steps?
Well, one direct way is supporting reputable conservation organizations. Groups like the World Wildlife Fund, National Wildlife Federation, local conservancies.
So donations, volunteering.
Exactly. Donations help fund research, habitat protection, anti-poaching patrols the actual work on the ground. Volunteering time or skills is also incredibly valuable.
Makes sense. What else?
Making sustainable choices in our daily lives. This means being conscious consumers.
Like choosing sustainable products.
Yeah. Looking for things like sustainably sourced seafood. Look for certifications like MSC. Choosing wood products, certified by the FSC. Reducing consumption of products linked to habitat destruction, like palm oil where possible. Just being mindful of what we buy and where it comes from. Reducing waste overall helps too.
So, voting with our wallets, essentially. What about bigger picture stuff?
Advocating for policy changes. This is really important. Supporting laws and regulations at local, national, international levels that protect endangered species and their habitats.
How can people do that?
Contacting elected officials, letting them know you support strong conservation policies, joining advocacy campaigns, making your voice heard as a citizen.
Okay, using our civic power. What else?
Education and awareness. It might sound simple, but it's powerful. Learn about the issues, understand the importance of biodiversity, and then talk about it. Share what you learn with friends, family, on social media.
So raising awareness helps build support.
Definitely. The more people understand and care, the more likely we are to see action. And finally, something that benefits basically everything. Reducing your own carbon footprint.
Connecting it back to climate change.
Exactly. Since climate change is a major threat multiplier, anything we do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions helps. Conserving energy, choosing greener transportation, supporting renewable energy, it all contributes to lessening the pressure on species and ecosystems worldwide.
So it's kind of a mix of direct support, conscious consumption, political action, spreading the word, and tackling climate change.
Precisely. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of actions, big and small, individual and collective.
Right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the main takeaway seems to be, yes, the extinction crisis is incredibly serious. It demands our urgent attention, but it's not hopeless. These success stories show that positive change is possible. Our understanding, our actions, they matter.
Absolutely. Every effort contributes to the larger goal of preserving the amazing biodiversity of our planet. Your engagement, your choices, they really do count.
And maybe a final thought to leave people with. Considering how interconnected everything is, as you mentioned with the wolves, what kind of unexpected ripple effects might happen if we lose even one species that seems, insignificant?
That's a profound question.
Yeah, what responsibility do we have to really understand those potential consequences and act before they happen? Maybe digging into that IUCN Red List website or checking out the work of some of the conservation groups we mentioned could be a good next step for anyone wanting to explore that further.